I gave people all the stuff they really needed. Social Security checks, utility bills, TV guide.
I want a TV guidance counselor. TV guidance counselor. Staying up to watch all night, and everything's gonna be alright with my TV guidance counselor.
Hey everybody, welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. I, as always, am Ken Reed, your TV Guidance Counselor, and this week we have two guests, both returning to the show, although one of them was quite a while ago, and I don't know if he remembers doing it because it was a weird... I'll explain. First guest, Irene Bremis. She was on earlier this year. She has a comedy special out called Sweetie. Very, very funny, very cool, former Massachusetts person as well. She used to host a Sirius XM show and a podcast with Frank Conniff. That's right, TV's Frank of MST3K and a stand-up in his own right. Worked on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, bunch of other stuff. She said this was so fun. Frank would love doing this. Let's do this together again and invite Frank. So that's what we did. The confusing thing is Frank was on the show about 8 years ago, but it was a live episode. I grabbed him and Trace Ballou at Scaricon. Yeah, it was Scaricon out in Western Massachusetts. Joe Bob Briggs was on that episode as well, and we chatted. I sat at their table and chatted, so I would not expect someone to remember that, Frank, or maybe the listener, but it's a fun episode. Anyway, so we get both of them this week. We talk about the 70s. Super fun episode. I always like having two guests. It's fun to see sort of where they differ and where there's overlap. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guests, Irene Bremis and Frank Conniff.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
From the East Coast as well, down in New York, returning to the show, Irene Bremis, Frank Conniff. How are you guys?
Good.
Doing great.
Thanks for having us.
You're so welcome.
You should clarify that I'm in New York and Irene is in Staten Island.
That's true. Spoken like someone who grew up in New York.
Oh yeah,
I did.
He did, and through his neighborhood. Every time I'm in his house, like it's incredible, like his whole story. And you ended up where you grew up, right, Frank?
Yeah, I'm in the neighborhood I grew up in.
It's weird how that happens. I live a mile and a half from where I grew up, and I never thought that would be the case. Ever.
Yeah. Are you in Boston, did you say?
Yeah, I'm right outside of Boston.
Okay.
But I lived in London. I was this is where I live. It's very strange. And then Irene, you were sort of in New York for a bit, and then you were in Arlington, and then you're back in New York.
Yep. Go Celtics, sweetie. You know I'm a Celtics fan.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah, and now I'm on Staten Island. Frank likes to joke that it's just as racist as Boston.
Yeah, it's like a little Boston. It's like a Chinatown, but for Boston in New York.
It's MAGA land, but with good pizza.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
that's
very good
almost
pizza.
Worth it. Almost worth the trade-off. Yeah, that's Cropsey country, if you know that legendary thing.
Big time. I'm really not looking forward to 2024 in November, or now at all.
No one is. Nobody is.
When did I move here? Let's be honest.
At least you'll be in the one area that's safe from destruction if that happens, apparently.
Probably,
apparently. Yeah. But do we want to save Staten Island? I don't know how that happened.
We got to have some place to put garbage.
Yeah, that's true.
I will touch that.
Fair enough. I'm so welcoming to my guests. Also, the Celtics winning is interesting because when I was growing up, nobody cared about the Celtics because it was post Larry Bird. And we used to be able to just walk into the Boston Garden for free during games.
Larry Bird. And you know who cares less than the people pre-Larry Bird? Frank Conniff.
Yeah, not a basketball guy.
I am not. I lost interest when Bob Cousy left. Okay, that's an obscure basketball thing that I happen to know.
I'm also not a sports guy either. I could mention Bill Lambier only because there was a Nintendo game called Bill Lambier's Combat Basketball.
And my brother Tony went to Bob Cousy basketball camp when we were kids, so that's how I know.
Wow.
I went to Dave Cowan's fast break basketball camp, and it was an overnight camp, and I didn't even make it to dinner time. I was like, out of here. Not doing this. Not my thing. So I gave you guys a TV guide from 1972. This has got Mary Tyler Moore on the cover. This is a Southern New England edition from Fall River, Mass. This is a pretty fun issue, February 26th to March 3rd. You guys have some notes here. One thing I want to note is on the back cover, because of the way that I scan them, there's the classic cigarette ad. This is for a cigarette I never heard of called Doral. And it's like a...
Oh, I remember
Doral.
Doral. Yeah.
Okay. Doral was famous for a bit. It seemed like it didn't last.
I think it's. I think the ad was the best. It was for women. The best cigarette to smoke during pregnancy. I think was the ad.
When you're having a martini, let me add to that.
Yes, yeah, it's garnished with it. This one is, it's very similar to those old Marvel Comics Hostess Pie ads, except it's for cigarettes
sure.
and it has Sherlock Holmes.
Wow. Well, he smoked a pipe, though. I mean, that's a weird choice for a cigarette ad.
Well, he has Watson smoking the cigarette and convincing him to do it. It's called The Case of the Singing Cigarette. But my favorite thing is there's a little teeny section where it has like a split diagram of the filter, and it says, the filter system you'd need a scientist to explain. But Doral says it just says 2 words, taste me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you'd need a scientist to explain exactly when the cancer is going to come into your body.
I'm picturing a scientist be like, look, it'd be too complicated, so I'm just going to tell you this, taste me.
Yeah, exactly.
So 72, this is an interesting year. This other ad too for True Cigarettes with this weird, there's too many cigarettes in here.
Trying to kill women. That's another one that was appealing to women while smoking a fucking pipe with marijuana, I'm guessing.
Yeah, after he does cocaine, so he can come down.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is a terrible thing that I see, especially in the 70s. All the cigarette ads that are for women are like aimed at weight loss.
Did you notice the part where Holmes goes, this is a very tasty cigarette, and Watson goes, no shit, Sherlock.
That's when Holmes goes, taste me, and then it gets weird.
Yes, exactly. With his live-in companion, Watson.
It's elementary, my friends. So we get a bunch in here, dentifrice and all that kind of stuff. A fabric softener I never heard of called Rain Barrel.
Oh, I don't remember.
Rain Barrel.
It looks like the G Your Hair Smells Terrific shampoo. It's got that kind of vibe, but it's fabric softener.
Rain Barrel. Jesus.
That doesn't sound nice.
That kind of goes against the trend. I remember that fabric softeners had like cuddly plush toys were their spokesman back then.
There, Frank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Snuggle.
Yeah. Snuggles, yeah. So that, like, Rain Barrel is like the opposite vibe of that, you know.
Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, these clothes are so nice. It's like they've been left in a rain barrel.
Yeah, that would be kind of smelly, I think.
Laundry detergent you would use to really get out those jizz stains, you know?
Yes, yeah. Or put some in.
Out Rain Barrel. Those tough jizz stains.
It does sound like a hobo shampoo.
I think what Irene is trying to say that maybe that is the fabric softener.
This fabric's far too stiff.
God, I miss you, Frank. Oh, shit. Nobody.
Then there's an article in here about Susan Hayward, which was amazing. I don't know if you saw this.
Oh, I didn't.
She is.
Oh, she was an actress. She was in like Valley of the Dolls and
right, Valley of the Dolls. Okay.
And a lot of the 50s were like her heyday. I Want to Live was, I think she won an Oscar for that.
Okay.
A very good movie, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And
a good movie?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
She was like a 40s, 50s starlet, like signed to Paramount.
Yeah.
And so this is a really kind of fascinating article about how she's now old and is in TV movies. Because that's what happened. They would have either on the way up or the way down. But it's like kind of a really great, well-researched sort of snapshot of this golden age of Hollywood woman working in TV movies.
I know. It's really interesting that a movie star thought like getting a TV show is failure. You know, like
Yeah.
now, like trying to get like a TV series is like even, I think it's even bigger than scoring a movie, you know?
Well, there's listings in this TV guide for the Doris Day show, you know, and she was a big movie star who ended up doing a TV series because her husband robbed all her money from her, and
Wow.
she had to make it back, and then there's I saw a listing for Cades County, which was a Glenn Ford TV show. Just a few years earlier, he had been a big movie star, but that was that early 70s was a period when TV was really starting to get movie people. Henry Fonda had a show around that time called The Smith Family that Ron Howard was on, and there's an ad in that TV guide too for Edward G. Robinson in the Old Man Who Cried Wolf, which was an ABC movie of the week.
And that's wild, man. Because now, Frank, wouldn't you guys agree? Like getting a TV series is the shit.
It is. It used to be there was like snobbery from movie people towards TV.
I remember,
and that's all completely gone now. Everybody is in a TV. Natalie Portman, I just saw an ad for her on some Apple TV series that's starting, and you can name anyone.
anyone.
They're all doing TV series.
Yeah, everybody.
It's like once you went to movies, you never went back. It was like the Woody Harrelson, you know, like it's like not the guy I would have pegged from Cheers to be a movie star.
No, not at all.
Although Fred McMurray of My Three Sons, famously at the height of his movie star fame, asked to do a TV series because he wanted summers off.
Yeah, because that's actually a rare case where he was actually still a movie star when he started doing My Three Sons. That was the same year that The Apartment came out, and also The Absent-Minded Professor, big Disney films. But I read somewhere that Fred McMurray had it in his contract that all of his scenes were filmed within a couple of months, and then for the next 4 months they'd have to film the rest of the series, but all of his stuff would be done within a few months, which was like a brilliant thing, you know.
Yeah, I had the actor that played Chip on. Why am I blanking on his name? He's in The Aftermath and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, but not Barry Livingston.
No,
the
his
other
brother, Stanley Livingston.
Okay. Stanley. Okay.
Yeah, and he said that they would film like all out of order. They'd film all of McMurray's scenes in like 2 months, and then they'd spend the rest of the year filming their scenes. But the problem was they're kids and they grow. So he's like, you know, I'd film these scenes with Fred, and then we'd go to film the rest of the episode 3 months later, and I'm 6 inches taller, and the wardrobe I had doesn't fit, and it was like a huge deal.
Wow, that's crazy.
Just so he can have vacations.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Frank said you made some notes there. Irene, did you make some notes here? We could just go through whatever your first note is, and we can see what we got. How long did you guys?
First choice for a husband. Let's put it that way. How long? He was number one, but he wasn't around, and I already said I do. I don't know, Frank. How long have we known each other? We actually met in.
Well, we've known each other as far as my remembering when we met.
That's all that counts.
For about like 10 years, from when I first came back to New York, and I think it was at the Greenwich Village Comedy Club, I think was where I met you.
No,
and
before that, but that hurts a little.
Well, we've been through this already. That I met you like apparently in the 70s, and I had no memory of it.
That was me, Frank. I was smoking a Doral while I was pregnant, a martini.
And you had the big Afro puffs.
But when I moved back, and then we met doing stand up. And then Irene started doing the John Fugelsang show, which I was a regular on.
That show. He brought.
Yeah, I got her on that show, and we've known each other ever since.
And we've been together ever since. And I just completely fell hard in love with Frank. And then we did our own podcast, and he's like one of my very best friends. I love Frank.
I love Irene.
This is a beautiful love story that we could do a TV movie of. But what film stars of yesteryear would we cast as you guys?
Oh, mine. That's easy. Who's the oldest fucker you can think of?
I want Brian Denehy to play you.
Yeah, you know what? I met
God,
Brian Denehy on the Fugelsang show, and he said something to me that I took very kindly to. He said, "You have the map of Ireland on your
Oh, he
face."
said that to you. I thought that was your
Yes.
line. Oh my God, I love.
Not knowing him at all, that sounds so Brian Dennehy.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that line.
And to have him tell me that, I mean, that makes it official.
Yeah.
You can genuinely find Kilcarney on my face now.
Corks down by the chin.
Yeah.
All those places.
Do we have someone we're casting as Irene?
Yeah, Maureen O'Hara.
Oh, good call. Although she's dead.
I'm not really familiar.
Well, she's in the most Irish movie ever, which is The Quiet Man with John Wayne, directed by John Ford. She's the lovely lass in that.
Lovely lass. I love you so.
Yes.
That map is getting brighter. Hold on a second.
She plays John Candy's mom in Only the Lonely as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, she had a very long career.
That movie's great and underrated.
Oh, I haven't seen it. I'll have to see it.
It's so good. It's him and Ali Sheedy, and it's sort of a romantic comedy, but it's like they're a great couple, and Maureen O'Hara is his like overbearing mom, but it's that thing that makes you really sad when you see John Candy in it, that he died, because you're like, we would have got the best like heartbreaking bittersweet roles that he was kind of shifting into.
Yeah, he was just getting started when he died.
Yeah.
It was really sad.
It's so sad.
He was so great.
He was
Such a
amazing.
good movie.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So the first thing I saw as soon as I opened up the Saturday is there's an ad for The Sixth Sense in here, which is one of the anthology horror shows. And this one says, "Can a dead man strike from the grave?" Starring Gary Collins and William Shatner.
Yeah, I think Shatner would have been the guest star.
Yeah.
Gary Collins, that was a show. That was not a long-lived show, but I think the whole thing about it was a detective show, but he had psychic ability or something like that.
Wow. Because
Yeah.
that movie, The Sixth Sense, when I saw that, I thought, wow, it's amazing how like things are recycled, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, a psychic detective sounds like a very 1972 premise.
And it's circling back now.
I have noticed stuff's like way more high concept now, like just it's almost to silly proportions.
Yeah.
The thing that struck me, first of all, looking at the Saturday night listings, was that it reminded me, and this particular night was not a completely accurate representation, but of what an incredible night of TV comedy Saturday night was in the 70s, starting off the night with All in the Family.
Yes.
And then it's not in this listing, but the Bob Newhart show came on afterwards, and then the Mary Tyler Moore show,
Loved her.
and then the Carol Burnett show. But in this case, Mission Impossible is on Saturday night, which is, I mean, that was a good show too. But that was like, people now talk about peak TV, but we had it back then in the early 70s in terms of comedy and in terms of shows that were really All in the Family and the Mary Tyler Moore show in different ways were completely groundbreaking and new, and so that was just reminded me of what a great. And these days, Saturday night, the networks don't even pay attention to Saturday night. They just dump reruns.
It's a death slot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So true, Frank. Well said. And I watched the All in the Family. And the last time I was on your show, remember, Ken, we discussed it was like a very fruitful time for women.
Yeah.
To be at the helm of their own shows. Like, it was a very powerful time for women too, like Mary Tyler Moore and Alice. I don't know when Alice came out.
Alice started.
Yeah, that was around the same time.
73, I think.
Early 70s.
Yep. Maude, Phyllis, Rhoda.
Yeah.
Exactly. All these different strong women,
Which is weird because, I always think of Bewitched as a very 60s series. But weirdly, and I think this is the final season, it's on Saturday night. So there's a crossover where Mary Tyler Moore and Bewitched are airing on the same night. New episodes. And you can't get a more like 60s versus 70s depiction.
Yeah. Because the Mary Tyler Moore was near its beginning of its run, and Bewitched was like right at the end of its run, I guess, at this point. Yeah, and then Bewitched, I remember when I was a kid, it was always on Thursday night. So that's another indication that they were moving it around at that point because it wasn't the rating powerhouse that it used to be.
Wow. Or TV shows back then, right? Because sometimes you had to like pick and choose.
Yeah.
There was a struggle there.
Yeah, and you couldn't tape anything.
Yeah.
You either watched it that night, or if you missed it, you waited till the summer to see the rerun.
That's right.
That was your only two chances.
Not to mention He Who Shall Not Be Named here, but there is a Bill Cosby special on.
Yeah.
Yes, I saw
I've
that.
never
Bill
seen
Cosby.
this. It's Bill Cosby on Prejudice, and it seems weird. The format is effectively simple. On a bare set, Cosby speaks the words of a bigot who explains why he hates everyone from women, kids, old people, Mexicans, Poles, and Greeks.
Oh, wow. Now the Greeks, fuck you, bitch. Fuck you, bitch.
Actually, it was.
And when you read, like when I was reading that whole thing with Cosby on Tuesday nights, I put it in my phone, but I can't flip to it. There was that whole thing that he was filling in as a sex teacher. I forget what it was.
Yeah, no, that was
the Bill Cosby
I made
show.
a note of that too. That's on the Tuesday night, but the full title of this was Bill Cosby on Prejudice against Roofies.
Yes,
he was speaking out against people who objected to having their drinks drugged, and saying that was the sign of a closed mind.
Yeah.
This seems like such a good way to just go out and say horrible things, but say like, I'm playing a character.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a monologue.
But Bill Cosby was, he was always doing stuff like that back then. He was all over the TV.
He was all over the TV. And also, my uncle, who was like a very famous, well, no one knows who the hell he is, but he played with all the greats in jazz. He was I think he played the saxophone. Yeah, it was the saxophone. He played with everyone, and he said that Bill Cosby, they would play while he was doing comedy, and he said he was the biggest fucking prejudice. He was racist as shit against Hispanics, and that he was the biggest entitled dick ever imaginable.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, the way you're talking about him, this Bill Cosby guy doesn't seem all that great a person.
What a terrible thing! This is a non-sexually assaulting terrible Bill Cosby story, but someone who used to be the manager at like one of the comedy theaters around here told me they used to book him every summer, and he would send them this like very elaborate rider about what foods he wanted, and they were from specific chefs from specific restaurants, not even in the city he was playing. Right? So they'd have to have stuff shipped in. And the first time she worked with him, she got a phone call and she thought it was a joke. He goes, "This is Bill Cosby. I'd like to talk to you about my soup." And she was like,
"Oh my God!"
It's like, what?
You've heard of the soup Nazi? He was the soup rapist.
Yes. Got to make sure it's cool though, because that's going to be quite an injury. Unless it's gazpacho.
Yeah.
That's a tip I didn't want to give people. That's Saturday. Anything else on Sunday we get?
Sunday.
Sunday. What did you think, Frank? For me, at that life, it was the Ringling Brothers. I hate to say it, but I loved watching the circus. Yeah,
well. What would have made me watch that would have been the fact that Dick Shawn was the host of it. And Dick Shawn. People remember him now. He was he's in The Producers, which was his immortal thing. But he was a great comedian, and I was always a fan of his. But I don't know if I would have
watched the circus. Not enough.
Watch the circus thing. Not enough what?
Not enough to pull you into watching.
No, not quite. Well, for one thing, there's clowns in a circus, and who doesn't hate clowns?
Everyone.
But.
And if you like them, you need to watch, what's his name? Who's that serial killer?
John Wayne Gacy?
John Wayne Gacy, yeah.
Who Brian Denehy played in a TV movie.
Oh, that I didn't know. I'm glad that was the reference he made. Glad he didn't make that reference. Hey,
You know, I played Gacy.
You have the map. You have the map of John Wayne Gacy on your face. Like, that wouldn't have been that good a thing. I'll just say. But you know what? I noticed that that night one of the channels was showing the movie The FBI Story with Jimmy Stewart, which is a movie I've always liked, and for people who might be interested, there's a 10-minute version of Killers of the Flower Moon in that movie. The story that Killers of the Flower Moon was based on, the real life thing that the FBI investigated, is covered in it because the movie is very episodic. It covers a lot of different FBI cases throughout the years, and they have the same story of Oklahoma, although they don't mention any of the characters really. It's kind of a like a Cliff Notes version of it, but that was the first movie version of Killers of the Flower Moon, was that 10-minute segment.
Wow, that's so interesting. That's crazy.
Is Dick Shawn? Remember, Dick Shawn's in Mad World, right?
Yes, he is.
And
he's the one. I'm coming,
yes.
Mama. I'm coming, Mama. He was Ethel Merman's son.
He's kind of terrifying. And if I'm remembering correctly, isn't he famously one of the people that literally died on stage and people thought he was joking?
Yes, he did.
Oh my!
People thought he died on stage, and people thought he was doing a bit. And he fell down on the floor, and it took them a few minutes to realize he really had just dropped dead.
Wow! Oh my!
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
I mean, there are worse ways to go.
Yeah, I mean, I've died on stage many times, so it wouldn't even seem that unusual for me if that happened.
At least no one noticed. Like, that's the thing. It was like, he must have been doing well, at least. Like, if everyone was like, we noticed he died 20 minutes before he fell down.
Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
On the same page in the guide, and this, I've never seen this in my life. There's an ad for men's wigs.
Oh,
men's wigs.
Here, sweetie. Yeah.
This says men's stretch wigs with a natural look completely covers all your hair and sideburns, which I don't think I've ever seen. And they're only $9.
Wow. And they come in min-wax colors, like something you'd find in a whorehouse.
It's for the people who smoke the cigarettes on the back of the thing and are now going through chemo, so it works out perfectly for them.
All the haircuts look like you're either in the Beatles or Adam 12, but they have like 6 different ones, but they're really just those two.
So crazy.
I'd be fine either Adam 12 or the Beatles. I'd be happy to have that.
But they don't look. Let's be honest.
No.
Okay. I have a couple of them floating around here from the 70s.
That sounds like Staten Island. I've never seen sideburns on a wig. That's the one that throws me off.
Yeah, that seems like, and if you were like self-conscious about going bald, why would sideburns be even a consideration?
Committing to the character. You know?
And also, when you're bald, you can have sideburns,
right?
Or maybe not. I don't know. I may be wrong about that, but
maybe you're just balding on the sideburns.
Yeah.
There's a Bob Hope special on that night, which I have to say never enjoyed.
Yes. I completely agree. I saw that Sammy Davis Jr. is on it. I always loved watching Sammy Davis Jr., but there is no such thing in the world as a good Bob Hope special. They were, and what I'm saying is just absolute fact. And he, it was.
It was Bob Hopeless.
Yeah, yes. No, it was Bob Hope Full, which is what's bad about it. But it was really like hard to comprehend in the 80s when Woody Allen and Dick Cavet started saying that Bob Hope was this great comedian who was in the 40s. And some of his movies are very funny from the 40s. But his TV specials were just thrown together. They're always just reading off of cue cards. It's just completely half-assed. And they had them on TV all the time when I was a kid. And my generation, we grew up thinking that Bob Hope sucked because his specials were so bad.
Wow, yeah. I mean, your specials, your one time to shine and prove everybody that you're wrong,
Well, actually, Jackie Gleason said that Bob Hope's specials are so like haphazardly thrown together that he hasn't met one of his guest stars in years.
You guys have seen the footage that Dana Gould shared when he was co-hosting that Bob Hope special.
Yes.
Oh my God.
He was on Bob Hope did like a young comedian special, and Dana was one of the comedians, and Dana's description of the literal, it's sad, the senility and dementia of Bob Hope is just, it's just really sad. I mean, he just did not know when to get off the stage.
We know a few people like that, Frank, but
yeah. I'm one.
will also drop. No, I'm just.
We got a list, everybody. Here we go.
Okay.
And to make matters worse, Milton Berle is co-starring in this special with Bob Hope.
Yeah, well, the whole I noticed the whole special is a tribute to vaudeville, and when I was a kid, I like Bob Hope and Jack Benny and George Burns. They all came out of vaudeville. They loved reminiscing about vaudeville. It's like us comedians talking about comedy clubs, like when we first started out. And anytime they could do a sketch based around vaudeville, they would do it. But if you really vaudeville, you should have been there in 1925. Not in 1975.
50 years ago, let me tell you. And if you're a Bob Hope fan, this Sunday night is just killer, because you can watch his special at 9, and then at 10 o'clock, it's Bing Crosby and Friends with his guests, Pearl Bailey and Bob Hope.
Yeah, I know. There was no getting away from Bob Hope, no matter what we did. Even people who went over to Vietnam to fight in the war couldn't avoid him because he came over there.
We enlisted for this.
Pass.
People who went to be killed just so they'd have to never see another Bob Hope special. Yes.
I talked to Emmanuel Lewis, and he went on all those USO tours with Bob Hope in the 80s. And he was like, he made us rehearse like nonstop, like on the plane there. It was like really like, come on, we got to get this right.
Well, the great thing about that is that none of the preparation showed up on stage, so that's great.
I was going to say, what happened?
And that audience is just, in theory, just grateful to have a show. So, like, it's not like they're going to be like, I've seen better. They just want to see Brooke Shields like everyone else.
Exactly.
Nothing between me and my Calvin.
The opposite of that, the Lou Gordon Show, which this is a Boston edition, and this was on TV 56, which was one of our UHF stations. So I don't know if the Lou Gordon Show was local or not, but that night at the same time as the Bing Crosby Show is Lou Gordon with women's lib leaders Gloria Steinem and Elizabeth Harris.
Wow.
Oh.
That's amazing.
Well, that was like in the early 70s, talk shows like that. Women's lib was like a Phil Donahue or whatever, like a lot of women's lib discussions.
A lot of
going
women's
on.
lib. God damn it, discussions. Go back to pregnancy and smoking.
Well, there's
exactly
that famous footage, I think it was Dick Cavet show, where those like feminists, they interrupted the show and made him read a manifesto on the air. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was great. That I think that shit holds up really well because why not just subvert everything and burn it all down while you're at it? It makes for good television.
Yeah.
And he went with it like that. That's the thing that surprised me. He's like, all right, fine, I'll read your thing. Let me see this. It's like, what? Oh, Dick Cavet. Anything else on Sunday, or are we moving on to Monday?
Sunday was obviously a very sad night for me because I only had. I don't know what I was doing, but it was a very sad night. Only one show, and Frank would never, even if he was hosting it.
Well, to this day, I get depressed on Sunday nights because I associate when I was a kid, I always had to get up and go to school the next day.
Wow.
Same. I'm the same way.
Yeah. So
I'll
even
have to
today,
into that. I mean,
it's bad.
Maybe I'm pretty much depressed on every night, but yes, little extra on Sunday.
Yeah, me too. It's just, the bar goes even lower on Sunday nights. It's the depression and the anxiety. You get that speedball of mental illness on the Sunday night. One thing on Monday, we look here, there's an ad for a thing in here that sounds like the most made up Boston term for earplugs. And there's an earplugs that it says they're called ear stoppies.
That does sound very Boston. I'm a stoppie.
Give me some ear stoppies. I don't want to hear this.
Stoppies, because they always have to put a negative connotation to everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A plug for peace and quiet. Anti-noise ear stoppies.
Tapping your freaking mouth.
Jesus Christ, I need some fucking ear stoppies with these kids. Oh, boy. Anything on the Monday here?
Well, first thing I noticed was that Rowan and Martin was still on, and that's like a very Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In is a very foundational show for me. It's I loved it when I was a kid, and I was influenced by its sense of humor, and I actually got to work with. When I worked on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, I got to work with. We did a whole episode that had Laugh-In people, had Ruth Buzzy, Joanne Worley, Alan Seuss, Dave Madden, also from the Partridge Family, and and it was just a joy to be around them. And the weird thing about this Rowan and Martin is that Gene Hackman is a guest on it, which is like, what? He's like, I'm a big movie star now from French Connection. I think for me to do is, I guess he didn't have that prejudice we were talking about against TV like other movie people
Plus,
did.
Plus, comedy always brings comics together. I'm kind of blown away with how much comedy there was in the 70s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Comics, there's a camaraderie with comics that you'll do anything. It doesn't matter whether it's prestigious or not, or beneath, or whatever the situation is. You just want to hang and laugh. And so, wow. Yeah, Laugh-In is on my list as well.
I wonder, too, if like Gene Hackman was on, because Laugh-In was seen as like a pretty hip show at that time too, so it was like you could almost get away with, it's like hosting SNL, right? Like you wouldn't go, you're a movie star and you're on SNL, that's a TV show, you suck. Like it was like the exception.
It
showed you were like fun and down to earth, and and could make fun of yourself,
funny too, because funny was important.
There's a variety special I never heard of here that's terrifying, and it's the Kroft brothers. And it's called Falderoy, a medieval fair with entertainers, witches, puppets created by the Kroft brothers. Anne Southern portrays the queen. Other actors, some in multiple roles, include Sid Charisse, Howard Cosell, Tootie Fields, Milt Kamen, Guy Marks, Rick Nielsen, Mickey Rooney, and the singing sisters of Yama Sumac.
Okay, well, Howard Cosell reminded me of my dad. I always loved him. Honest, but
I actually looked this show up because I'd never heard of it. It was actually a pilot, so it was the only time it aired, and I was like, wow, see, the Kroft brothers, that sounds great. And then I only found like 6 minutes of it on YouTube, and I think it was put together by a Ricky Nelson fan, because it was just Ricky Nelson singing, and I have to say it looked really bad. It looked like Sid and Marty Kroft without the acid, which is not good, because they're trying to do a primetime show, so it was much more subdued and less crazy than they usually were. Saturday morning was really their venue and was really where they, really did their thing and did their stuff that we still enjoy today. This primetime thing, just from the 6 minutes of it I watched, it just didn't seem that good. And I like, and Ricky Nelson is great, but the just show itself just didn't have it.
Yep. I actually never heard of it, so.
Yeah, I never heard of it either,
Never watched it. But what about Sonny and Cher? They were on Monday nights. That was my jam right there. Sonny and Cher.
Yeah.
Which I think the Crofts might have worked on. They did Donnie and Marie.
Donnie and Marie, yeah.
That's a whole different Mormon family suite. Come on.
Yeah. and Ken Berry is a guest star on it, and I always really liked Ken Berry. But I have to say, I saw that It Takes a Thief was on opposite. I totally would have watched It Takes a Thief instead of the Sonny and Cher.
I knew you were going to say that, Frank. I'm not joking. I knew that when I put down Sonny and Cher, Frank was going to say It Takes a Thief. I just knew it. But I never watched It Takes a Thief.
I loved it. It was like a secret agent show, except he was a thief, and he was a burglar who was brought in to to solve secret agent things. And
sounds like
and
IRS, sweetie. I know all about it.
What?
It sounds like the IRS. Yes.
It does. But I always and I really liked Robert Wagner on it, and it was just a show when I was a kid. I really
and Cesar Romero.
Wagner is great. He was in that. What was that show he was in with the woman?
Heart to Heart.
Oh, Heart to Heart. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for narrowing it down.
I got it.
Irene.
Not to be confused with the show his brother was in with that woman, Wonder Woman.
Wow, there must have been a lot of hate there, a lot of envy.
Yeah, well, Heart to Heart, which I have to say, I never really got into Heart to Heart, but I which is surprising because I like Robert Wagner and I fucking love Stephanie Powers, like more than life itself. I even would watch The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., which was a terrible show, but she was so sexy.
Okay. Rain Barrel, calm down.
Excellent callback. One for you. Anything left on Monday or on Tuesday? Anything?
The interesting things to me about Tuesday was the Glenn Campbell show was on, and I used to watch that when I was a kid. But the thing is when he first became famous, and I kind of enjoyed his show, but I really had no idea like how great Glenn Campbell was. I didn't know about him as a musician, and that he played with the Wrecking Crew, and just a great musician and artist all around. But I didn't realize that till later. And the other interesting thing was this is confusing to me because there's a listing on that night, and it just says James Garner as the name of the show, and that does not seem, because I know that show was called Nichols, and it was a Western. It's the between period of James Garner between Maverick and Rockford Files. It's like a transitional thing, but I don't know if they decided to start calling it the James Garner Show. That would be so weird to me to do that with an hour-long Western.
I always wonder if, because these, the variations of TV guides regionally, because they all had sort of different. I'm wondering if it was a case where someone was like, "What? Oh, what is the show on?" And he's like, "It's the James Garner one." I don't know. Just write James Garner.
Yeah. It never caught on, and I think Margot Kidder was on that show.
Oh, I
too,
love her.
So,
oh my.
Yeah,
Love her. What happened?
What happened? That was her pre Superman, and then she had some mental health issues later in life. But I think she turned out okay. I think she's fine.
I thought she was dead, Frank. How okay can she be? Isn't she dead?
She's not suffering from mental illness anymore, is she?
No. No, I was just watching Superman the other night. It was on Turner Classic Movies.
Love her.
She's so good in that.
I love her.
So everyone is so good in that.
Like, I literally, just even on a vacuous and vapid, I just loved her look. She's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Like when she was in Amityville Horror, like that whole, but she was just amazing actress. And then she did a terrible Christian movie, which I was like, Margot, that's when she started losing her mind. She did scared Christian. Frank, have you ever seen this?
What's it called? Is it the one with the man and the woman?
It's the other one.
Left Behind.
Oh,
Left
Kirk
Behind.
Cameron.
Oh, okay.
But there's another like big actor in it.
I thought Left Behind was about my comedy career.
The Ascension. She's in 1972. I think she was in the De Palma movie Sisters. Have you ever seen that?
Oh yeah, you're right.
Great too. I love that movie.
Yeah. She was something else. She was great.
I think the Glenn Campbell show, this is the one that replaced the Smothers Brothers as well, the previous season.
Yeah. It has that same kind of a Smothers Brothers vibe to it. I think some of the same writers worked on it, and it was good. Not as good as the Smothers Brothers, but it was a pretty good show. And I also noticed that Marcus Welby was on on Tuesday night, which like watching Marcus Welby while I was high is the closest I've ever come to medical marijuana.
So, what about Mary Tyler Moore? Am I the only one that was tuning in? That was on Tuesday, right?
Well, it must have been a rerun or something, right? Or they
surprising. Okay.
I think it was a rerun. It was on earlier in the evening. Marcus Welby, I've never seen. He's a doctor, and this episode is all about sickle cell anemia, which sounds real depressing.
Yeah, well, it's something that the Greeks get, you know.
Do they?
Which Cosby, that prick, is very happy about.
And I have to mention this just because it's one of my favorite MST bits is Cannon is on with William Conrad.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't even think of Cannon as an old show because I watch it in the middle of the night these days on MeTV.
What, on MeTV, Frank?
Yeah, it's on at 3 in the morning on MeTV, right between Mannix and Barnaby Jones. That's my prime TV time.
I always wondered how they got William Conrad to do Jake and the Fat Man, because that is the most condescending name for a TV show ever. And it's like, hey, you're a fat guy, right? We want you to be in this show. You're not playing Jake.
Well, you know, they paid him good money, and they said, hey, do you want to be a fatter man? Be in this show. Well, man, he was like, cool. And, you know, William Conrad had an amazing career. He was the voice of Matt Dillon on the radio version of Gunsmoke. And he had one of the great... he was one of the great voice talents, and he was the narrator of Rocky and Bullwinkle, too.
Which is amazing. I mean, that show is so funny and subversive. There's a rerun of It Takes a Thief, and this plot just sounds insane to me. It says, during a nuclear attack, a berserk security chief locks himself in the presidential control room.
Oh, well, you know what? That was a really good episode. I saw that one, actually. It was. And I remember how it went, like, Robert Wagner is Al Mundy, was the name of his character. He's making out with some hot lady, and then his boss calls him in the middle of it and says, a guy has locked himself in, and nuclear war is about to start. And he had to, Al Mundy, with his skills as a burglar, he had to break into the room that the guy had locked himself into, and stop him. And then at the end of the episode, I remember he goes back to the hot girl. She's all mad at him, and he's like, well, I'm sorry I had to stop a nuclear holocaust from happening.
Had to have, oh my God, that's a
classic man excuse.
Yeah, that was actually a really good episode.
I wonder if the government, that girl was a plant and they just put her there so that they'd make sure he did a really fast job solving the issue.
Yeah, almost as fast as his job of making love to her.
I'm sure he had a few choice words for the cock blocker that locked him.
Friggin' nuclear war every time. On Dick Cavet that night is Rod Serling. I actually would love to see that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think you can. I think Shout Factory has all the Dick Cavet episodes. I think you can watch it. Dick Cavet, another show completely foundational to me, completely formed my sensibility. In terms of culture and show business. I as much as I love Carson, when Dick Cavet was on against Carson, I never watched Carson. I always
Wow, really?
Yeah,
I always
absolutely.
watched Johnny Carson.
But this one, it's Carson's got Flip Wilson, Susan St. James, and George Carlin, and Cavet's got 90 minutes with Rod Serling.
Wow. Those are both great choices.
Those are great choices. Plus, if I had known what a dick he would have been to Joan Rivers, I would have gone to Cavet as well. I just want to throw that.
Yeah, Cavet. And I did get to meet Cavet, and he was, and when I tell people that I met him, the first thing people say is, "Did he mention Groucho?" Because yes,
we knew him.
I heard, but he didn't. But he did something that was just as like wonderfully Dick Cavet that was great was it was when John Fugelsang and I were working on a current TV show, and he was a guest on it, and he was backstage, and I go up to him, and he says, and I say, "Oh, Mr. Cavet, I'm just so thrilled to meet you. This is so amazing." And the very first words out of his mouth were, Jack Benny told me a story once. He was standing backstage, and it was like he's just launched into an anecdote, and it was just great. And then the next time I met him, he told me he had been on the phone with Steve Stoliar, who wrote a book about Groucho and is a mutual friend of Cavet and me. And he told me, "Yeah, you're the guy. You're Steve Stoliar's friend." So it just thrilled me that in a phone conversation, that I had come up in a discussion with Dick Cavet.
That's amazing. Incredible.
What's the over-under on how many cigarettes Rod Serling smokes in the 90-minute Dick Cavet interview?
Oh, probably. He probably smoked so much that Edward R. Murrow said, "Dude, tamp it down."
He probably smoked so much that... wait, I don't know what I'm going to come up with. The martini in her hand was getting secondhand smoke.
We did do a night gallery reference on Mystery Science Theater once, where someone was standing in front of a painting, and in Rod Serling's voice, I think one of the robots says, "Submitted for your consideration. A man who smoked more than Edward R. Murrow and Lillian Hellman put together," which I thought I always enjoyed that.
Fantastic. Wednesday night, Anne Meara is on Courtship of Eddie's Father playing, and this is a quote, "a real ding-a-ling."
Wow. Well, she could, and Jerry Stiller is on it too, right?
Yeah.
Which Stiller and Meara and Irene and I are both friends with Amy Stiller.
I wonder how she would feel about her mother being called a dingling in
if it meant booking a gig, I think she'd be very, very okay with it. But because of my friendship with Amy, I got to meet both Jerry Stiller and Anne Meara.
Yeah.
And Irene will back me up. Completely delightful, wonderful,
amazing,
kind, amazing people, and
really, really wonderful people. I remember Jerry Stiller just came down to a comedy show at B3 back in I think it was either the late 90s or very early 2000, before 9/11, and he would just come down and watch comics.
Yeah, that's how I met him too. Was doing shows with Amy in L.A. and he came to the show.
It was crazy.
He and Anne both so supportive of everybody, and
I loved his one episode too in the Twilight Zone. Now I'm merging the two with when he did the Devil's Advocate. Did you guys ever see that one? When he played that crazy radio host? Because we were just talking about Rod Serling.
Oh no, isn't that Tales from the Dark Side?
Oh, Tales from the Dark Side. That's a whole different.
No, I think it was the Twilight Zone. See, the Twilight Zone was also like a weird place that every celebrity would be, would like the TV spot, like to get on the Twilight Zone.
Yeah,
isn't the Jerry Stiller when he's like a radio DJ and it's just him in the episode, and by the end he kind of turns into like a demon?
A devil-looking werewolf, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a Dark Side, but I might be wrong. But he's great. I wanted to see him do more like villainous roles in the OK John Cusack comedy, The Hot Pursuit. Him and Ben Stiller play bad guys in it, and they're like really evil. Like Jerry Stiller's like a real bastard in it, and he's so good. And I'm like, I wish he played like a villain in something more.
Yeah, he would have been great in whatever you put him in. They were both actors who started a comedy team, and their comedy team is great, but they were both really good actors too.
And they survived their marriage. That's
what
I'm talking about. I mean, it's also hard. Like it can be great, like on paper, but they were just a really loving couple as well.
They never seemed competitive.
No.
Which is always that downfall.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, they had their thing that they did together, and then they had separate acting careers at the same time.
Yeah.
Jerry is in one of my favorite movies, The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Yes,
he's in that with Walter Matthau. So great.
That is an all-star cast of cantankerous old men.
Yes, it is.
Throw Abe Vigoda in there, and that's the best movie of all time.
It's great.
On Adam 12 that night, speaking of acting roles, Dick Clark is acting in this episode, playing a drag strip owner named Spider Watson.
Well, I could lie to you and say, oh, yeah, I think I saw that episode when it aired. But no, I've seen it recently, actually.
2 a.m. last night.
No, well, during the pandemic, I know this sounds like I'm bragging, but during the pandemic, I watched every Adam 12 episode. And I know exactly which one you're talking about. And Dick Clark tried to have a career as an actor, like in the 60s. He's in a couple of movies. Was
he even good at that, though? Who could tell?
He was, I did meet him when he produced, and I was a nominee at, not to brag, the Cable Ace Awards. Yes, the Cable Ace Awards, people. The award's so prestigious that even Hollywood said, you know what, we don't need to do this anymore. But
he was the announcer or the...
No, he produced it. That was his big thing, was producing award shows. And you could tell what a control freak he was, because I was in the lobby just before the show started. The show was going to start in like a minute, and just hanging out with my friends. And he came up to our group and like put his hands on a couple of our shoulders and said, "Could you please go into the theater right now?" like he was the usher.
Frank, what are you thinking? Okay. He's got like fucking, I don't know, like triggered with a minute to go with the ball drop.
Yeah. He was the usher, and he was very nice about it too. But you could tell he was just like, I'm not letting anything go with this, The
whole show, he's walking the aisles with a flashlight.
Yeah. Exactly. And then he was on a Sabrina episode too, and he was very, very nice, very cool to talk to.
I never really watched Bandstand that much either. Oh, I can't believe I missed this. At 8:30, they're doing Hellzapoppin on Wednesday.
Oh, I missed that. You mean they're showing the Olsen and Johnson movie?
Hellzapoppin, Olsen and Johnson's 1938 Broadway hit and 1941 movie. This is a failed pilot that is a 1972 remake of Hellzapoppin. In the Olsen and Johnson roles, it's starring Ronnie Schell and Jack Cassidy.
Oh my God, that sounds awesome. I missed that. I didn't see that. I would have been all over that. I would have.
Ruth Buzzy, Lyle Wagner.
Yeah.
Well, you can tell that the whole idea behind it was because Laugh-In was so successful that they wanted to do another Laugh-In, and Laugh-In itself was very influenced by Hellzapoppin. That burlesque, blackout, fast-paced, zany sketches. That's totally what Hellzapoppin was, and it's totally what Laugh-In was. So it makes sense that they would bring it back, but I should look that up. I would love to see that.
I'm curious. Yeah, Lynn Redgrave, Jackson 5, Rex Reed. I love the movie Hellzapoppin. It feels so contemporary. Like it weirdly seems really ahead of its time. Cause
it was very like crazy, like it's so meta, which was very unusual in its day, Where
are we? Thursday? Anything?
Thursday. Wait a minute. Did we skip over Gilligan's Island on Wednesday? Or wait,
Oh, was it on Wednesday? We did. Gilligan's Island.
And also I Love Lucy.
That would have been a rerun,
Bill Cosby
I'm sure.
as well.
Oh, the Bill Cosby is the one we should talk about because the episode is he has to give a sex education class.
I know, yeah.
That original Bill Cosby show was actually pretty good. It
was good. I liked that when I was a kid. He played
a gym teacher.
Chet Kincaid, gym teacher at school, and it was kind of a comedy drama kind of a thing,
Owen's more of a pedophile than a priest than a gym teacher. Let's be honest.
Let me check those jock straps, kids.
Yeah, that. But just like now, like him having to be a substitute sex education. I'm guessing everything in Bill Cosby's career is in retrospect ironic and weird.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where it's like, We should have known.
Should have known this very specific episode. That's ironically how he is. Yes.
And meanwhile, it's up against the show called The Mouse Factory starring Dom DeLuise.
Oh, I love.
Oh, wow. I don't remember that. I don't remember the Mouse Factory.
I don't remember that at all.
I remember the Duck Factory with Jim Carrey. But
Yes. Based on Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah. But I don't remember the Mouse Factory.
I'd watch
anything
Dom
with Dom
DeLuise.
DeLuise is worth
I
watching.
loved him. He was just he's just so sweet.
Yeah, and now I'm like being the big name dropper here, but I worked with him on Sabrina too. Yeah, he was a guest star, and it's actually one of the great moments of my career. Was the episode he was in was an episode I was the credited writer on, so I was on set while we filmed it, and he played a magician on it, I think, and there was one moment where he needed another line. He needed like a transitional line to get from one thing to the other. He just felt like he needed it, and so the script supervisor asked me if I had anything, and so I forget what it was, but I gave her the line, and then I watched as she walked across. I was on the other side of the stage. She walked across the stage and read him the line, and then I heard him laugh.
Oh, man.
Which was just.
And
Just
died
like,
on stage because that was
I did. That was all I needed to make Dom DeLuise laugh.
Amazing.
You know.
He had an amazingly strange syndicated show in 1989 called The Dom DeLuise Show. And the premise of it was a sitcom sketch show talk show. So him and George Wallace played barbers. And so they would cut people's hair and it would be celebrities and they'd interview them while they're giving them a haircut. And then in between would be all these sketches, and Boogaloo Shrimp would come in and do breakdancing, and Dom DeLuise had a chimpanzee. And it's the weirdest show.
That is so forward thinking right there. Like the ideas, like there's nothing that hasn't been recycled. For me, that's like such a brilliant idea.
Yeah, that sounds great. Also, you know, of course, giving Dom DeLuise a show, but also, you know, how great is it to put George Wallace in your show? There should be a lot more TV shows that have George Wallace in them. You know,
he's hilarious, and there's episodes where like Burt Reynolds comes in and he's fake cutting his hair, and it's hilarious.
But people would do that nowadays, right, Frank? Where like actually back then, when you had a TV show, you worked like John Cassavetes. He always worked with Gina Rollins and brought in all his people and his posse, or the Rat Pack. They always worked together, and it was like Burt Reynolds always worked with Dom DeLuise, and then he would also bring in what's his name, Jackie Gleason. Like people, there was like a real bond with comic actors back then, where they would just you know, pull each other into everything. You know, amazing.
I think they had more pull though as well. Like they could be like, "This is who I want," or "I'm walking," and it actually meant something. The network wasn't like, "Well, that person doesn't test that well, and can we get someone else to play Dom DeLuise?" And like
have enough followers on Instagram. Fuck them.
Right.
Yeah.
How's Jackie Gleason's TikTok?
Yeah.
How sweet it is.
Thursday, anything?
Well, Thursday, first of all, Me and the Chimp is on, which I know everybody is very excited about.
Me and the Chimp?
I actually remembered it was a show, and it starred Ted Bessel from That Girl. You know who I'm talking about? He was Marlo Thomas's boyfriend, Donald, on That Girl, and Peggy Cass was on it too. Although I might be confusing. Peggy Cass was on another show with chimps in the 60s, I think. But Me and the Chimp, and unfortunately, it was not the prestige program they thought it was going to be, and it didn't last. And I barely, I don't even know if I saw any episodes, but I do remember that there was a show called Me and the Chimp on.
This is the plot for that episode. Anniversary woes for Mike and Liz. Their pet chimp keeps butting into their romantic evening.
I'm guessing that was the plot of every episode. The thing about chimps, though, and they're, you know, they're delightful and everything, but I don't think chimps are as funny as everyone has thought they are for years and years and years, for decades.
Like
People are
have
convinced.
a chimp on with Dom DeLuise. Didn't they have like a
Yeah.
every on Cannonball Run or something? Or am I making?
Oh yeah.
Well, no, that was and there was Clint Eastwood had a chimp in
Eastwood.
Every Which
Right.
Way But Loose.
Wasn't it orangutan?
Yeah, but
I hate to sound like a racist, but any freaking swat a chimpanzee.
but I think, like, for instance, like the Abbott and Costello show, which I loved, had a few episodes where they had a Bingo the chimp was their chimp who was their buddy or whatever. I never thought that stuff was as funny as just Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, Chimp's not inherently funny. I will say my favorite moment in Chimp television is the Sergeant Bilko episode where the chimp accidentally gets enlisted into the army.
That does sound great. I
It's
mean,
very funny.
Bilko was an incredibly great show.
In the context of the episode, everything that happens makes perfect sense.
I'm sure.
And by the
I'm
end,
sure.
Phil Silvers is like, "Sir, I don't know how he got a name too. I don't know how that happened, sir." But it's like this whole, it's so funny. Oh, it's great.
What's your fascination with chimps and monkeys and apes back then? Like it was like it started with Curious George, but then it sort of like fell into like all the Eddie Murphy, even further. Like with you remember that scene in when he was playing his big movie.
Nutty Professor?
No, not the Nutty Professor. There was
Beverly Hills Cop.
an ape in it.
Coming to America?
Coming to America, yes, Coming to America. I think that culturally we just find chimps and monkeys and apes hilarious.
I think they should be funnier than they are. On paper, it would seem that a chimp would be really funny, but I don't think it
There's
always
a lot of
works out
angry
that way.
chimps listening to this show. It's bullshit.
Hey, I'll take. I know they're going to come after me on Twitter later.
You got chimp canceled.
Yes.
I will say a chimp I put in the same category as an impressionist. Like it's kind of impressive, but you still got to do something with it. Like
Yeah,
it can't just
right.
be on its own. It's not inherently funny.
It's impressive if you sound just like the celebrity, but you need jokes to go
Right.
with it.
Okay, all right.
Right.
There's a lot of chimps out there just doing right. They're going to be lifting
Yeah.
material, Frank.
The Lancelot Link fan club is the #1 listenership of my show, and
Oh, good.
it's gonna be there. Friday night, final night of the week. What do we got?
Oh, can I go? Let me tell you, Sam.
Yes,
I
please.
Yeah.
love Red Fox. I love how outspoken he was, that he didn't give a shit. I just love Red Fox, and I know people didn't really care for that show so much.
No, Sandford and Son, I think, was a really funny show because Red Fox was on it, and Red Fox was really funny. But also any scene he had with that woman who was always insulting him.
You look like a gorilla. What was her name? She was a very funny actress. I loved her.
She was hilarious, and anytime they were like interacting, it was gold. you know?
It was absolute gold. Those two had such a great rapport.
Yeah.
Dick Van Patten's in this episode of Sanford and Son.
Man. But then when you see Sanford and Son, it's like anything else. Like when you saw Bob Saget like do a show, like you see that he's rough around the edges. And I remember the first time that I saw Sanford, Red Fox doing stand up, I was like, whoa, this guy is like, he's like 0 to 1 million. You know, he says whatever. Of course, I love.
He was a great stand-up.
Yeah, just brilliant.
I might have mentioned this last time you were on, Irene, but do you know who his best friend was that he met when they shared a prison cell together?
Oh, I know this one.
Ooh,
I know this one.
You do?
Malcolm X.
Right, and I believe that
Wow.
Malcolm was called
Red.
Detroit Red.
Yeah.
He was called Detroit Red because everybody knew Red Fox, and they had to come up with a different name for Malcolm X, and everyone called him Detroit
That
Red.
doesn't surprise me. I love that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Such a weird pop culture crossover. Yeah, and I didn't know that Sanford and Son was opposite the Brady Bunch.
Which I watched, and who knew that Flo was banging Greg the whole time,
Everybody.
right?
If you saw the episode.
That's the plot of this one, actually.
They were also forward thinking with Zoom. I mean, who'd have thought like that little,
Oh yeah, they opened with a zoom. That's
yeah,
true.
I mean, look at the way they
Yeah.
pulled out the lens, huh?
Somehow that sounded dirty, and I don't know why.
But you know what? Friday night was there's some really great stuff in there because I saw that Room 222 was on, and I loved that show when I was a kid.
222.
And it's a great show. It was on TV Land a few years ago. I thought it held up really well, and it was created by James L. Brooks, who went on to do the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and Gene Reynolds was the producer who ended up doing MASH. So it was just it was really a terrific show.
Another show that was so ahead of its time on so multiple levels.
Yeah.
About it, I get blown away. Like even like shows like Soap, like all the cultural and social issues that they were facing outside of All in the Family, which is the most prevalent one. But even like Soap, you've seen Soap, right?
Yeah, Soap was very very provocative.
Mental illness,
Yeah.
all these different issues. I'm just blown away. I'm going to start watching MeTV on a regular, Frank.
Gonna set an alarm and get up at 3 for the good
Just got
stuff.
sexy up in this bitch, okay? It's MeTV.
Yeah, was it Susan Harris did Soap, I think, and then
and then she did the Golden Girls. Yeah, so
yeah. Room 222 was also kind of like a dramedy. Like it was.
It was a dramedy. It had funny stuff in it, but it was when you watch it today, it had some very touching episodes. Actually, there was when I was a kid. There was an episode on about the class clown and how he was always making jokes, but it was covering up his pain.
Wow.
And then the next day at school, a kid came up to me and he said, "Did you see Room 222? That was you, man. That was you."
They just hugged you. I'm sorry you had to go through that, man. And then the Don Rickles show was on that night with Bob Newhart as the guest.
Yeah, one of many attempts to have a successful Don Rickles show, which never came to be. Unfortunately, they couldn't capture him in a regular format like that.
Did you ever see his backdoor pilot from Give Me a Break?
No, I did not.
It's him and Pam Adlon.
Oh, I love her.
What?
And it's Don Rickles plays a guy who owns like the newsstand down the street from Nell's house. And Pam Adlon plays, as you would imagine, a tough street kid who gets caught shoplifting. And then like the court's like, you got to work at his newsstand because you stole stuff from him. And then it's all like, you. And I was like, there's no way this freaking show is going.
But then he found
Oh, that's a shame.
mobster movies like Casino and wait.
He was in Casino. He was an actor. He was in movies in the 50s. Run Silent, Run Deep. He's in that.
Man with the X-ray eyes.
Yeah, and then in a lot of Beach Blanket Bingo, a lot of those movies in the 60s he was in.
I remember Blanket Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another great comedy that's on Friday night is The Odd Couple.
Oh, I love The Odd Couple.
Actually, The Odd Couple has what might be my favorite sitcom joke of all time. My favorite. I'm going to tell it to you. And it was in the premise, I think Oscar or Felix was in a creative writing class. And there's a guy sitting at a desk scribbling away. And in my memory, the actor playing him was Phil Leeds. Do you know who that is? He was like a character. He was in a ton of just a funny looking guy, small guy. He's there scribbling away. And Felix says, "What are you writing?" And he looks up and he says, "I'm ripping the lid off the upholstery industry. I'm naming names."
This is a good segment for your show. Like talking about like what your favorite comedic line has ever been. Okay, Frank, on the heels of what you just said about a funny joke, one of my favorite lines was, I believe it was from A Fish Called Wanda. This was wearing a fur, and some activist went up to her and said, "I can't believe you're fucking wearing a fur." She goes, "You know how many fucking animals had to die for you to wear this fur?" She goes, "You know how many animals I had to fuck to get this."
Yes, that is a great line.
That is a great line.
Yeah.
It's come up on the show a bunch of times, and I have difficulty coming with my own favorite because this one has sort of supplanted my own memory. But Tom Snyder, the one who worked with Jonathan Katz, Tom Snyder, not the talk show host, his favorite joke ever is from a Newhart episode, and it's Melanie Chartoff and Peter Scolari, and Melanie Chartoff's playing his psychiatrist, and she says, you know, "I'm afraid I can't see you anymore because of my feelings for you." And Peter Scolari goes, "I knew it, you hate me." And she goes, "No, it's actually very much the opposite." And he goes, "I hate you."
That is a great line.
Just very funny. But weirdly, one of the funny lines that pops up when I think of this is from, of all things, Punky Brewster. And it's because it's one of the first ones I remembered as a kid sticking in my head. And it's Cherry Johnson's asleep and her grandmother's like, "Come on, Cherry." She's sleeping at Punky's house on the couch. And she's like, "Wake up, we got to go to bed." And I thought that was very funny as a kid. It's not fur coat funny, but you know. Tartar coffee. Well, that is the week. Thank you guys for doing this. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
So much fun, Ken. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
You're welcome. And we'll all get up at 3 a.m. tonight and watch MeTV, and then we'll discuss.
Yeah, I think there's I think Bradford Dillman is guest starring on Mannix. No.
There you go, Frank and Irene. It does have a great sort of like parents, friends, couple ring to it. Like Frank and Irene are coming over. Maybe that's just me. Is it just me? Anyway, had a great time talking to them. Cannot thank them enough. I put links to all their social media stuff, Irene's special, all the cool stuff Frank's been working on. The Mads do stuff still. Always a good follow on social media, and you can do that there if you aren't already. If you aren't already following me, you should at Kenneth W. Reed at TV Guidance. You can email me, tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com, ken@icanread.com, leave a review of the show, go to the Patreon, do all the things, or none of the things. Either way, I'm just happy that you're here. And I'll be happy that you're here next week for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.